Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's so great to see you. So, in this video I'm going to be doing a video on endometriosis because guess what? Good news! I've been diagnosed with endometriosis, which is actually really great. To most people it wouldn't be necessarily the greatest diagnosis, but to me it kind of is, because now I can kind of go towards treatment because I kind of knew I already had it. For those of you who don't know what endometriosis is, I'm just going to do a really quick explanation, tell you the symptoms, how common it is. So what is endometriosis? Endometriosis is a long-term condition where tissue similar to the lining of the womb grows outside the womb and can sometimes attach to other tissue. So basically, in a nutshell, that's what it is. How common it is. So believe it or not, 1 in 10 women actually struggle with endometriosis. There are actually some celebrities that suffer it that you may know. So there's Amy Schumer, Susan Sandron, Hasley, and Whoopi Goldberg, to name a few. If you don't understand how serious endometriosis is, and if you are squeamish, please skip to this timestamp. I'm going to throw up on screen some pictures of some endometriosis. So, now that's out of the way. Welcome back to everyone who was squeamish. So, what are the symptoms? The symptoms are very different for each woman, and later on in the video you'll kind of see me and some other people who have endometriosis talking about our experiences with it. But these are the most common. Pain in your lower tummy, pelvic pain, or back pain. Period pain that stops you doing your normal activities. Pain during or after sex. Pain when peeing or pooing during your period. Feeling sick, constipation during your period. Diarrhea during your period. Blood in your pee during your period. And difficulty getting periods and heavy periods. So, another thing that accompanies endometriosis is something called endobelly. And if you don't know what endobelly is, I'll put on screen what it looks like, because it is absolutely horrible. Because not only do some people who have endometriosis are infertile, but you also have to deal with then looking like you're pregnant. So I'm going to answer some questions that you guys asked me over my many social medias and stuff like that. So what are the treatments, somebody asked. So there are many treatments that can help, and it's really about finding what's good for you and what works for you. Some people find that a simple diet change, such as taking out gluten, can help. Some people find birth control helps, and it can even get as severe as lasering the endometrial tissue away, and a hysterectomy, which is removal of the womb. Could endometriosis be deadly? So the short answer for you there is yes, it can. Although it's extremely rare. At times, endometriosis can get into the bloodstream, and it can travel to places like the lungs, heart and brain, which at times can be life-threatening. So yeah, short answer is yes, but it is so rare. Can you still get pregnant? So, as I said earlier, some women suffer with infertility, and that is a symptom of endometriosis at times. But yes, you can most of the time. Endometriosis does decrease fertility, so each case is different. Therefore, I would recommend you go see your OBGYN if you have endometriosis and want to get pregnant. But usually you can. It might just take a bit longer than some other people who don't have endometriosis. So, can you fully get rid of it? Well, that depends really. Usually you can't 100% get rid of it because it can keep growing back. But sometimes you can get rid of it, for the most part with treatments. But some women struggle to get rid of endometriosis. Someone later on in the video has had many laser rings done to try and get rid of it. So I would really recommend you speaking to your GP or OBGYN for information specific to you, because obviously in these videos I can't be specific to you, I can just be generalised. Now on to questions about, there'll be 3 people answering questions, one of which being me, one of which being my mom, one of which being my aunt. They will all be explaining their own different stories and suffering with endometriosis. We are answering the same questions, so it's still showing how different each stage can be. How long have I had my symptoms? Well, I've actually had them from about 12, but I started having really heavy periods and really painful ones. So much that I had to skip out on school at times. But I only got diagnosed with it a week or two ago, so you can take whichever number you want. But I have suffered severely with it for about 10 months.
Well, I was only diagnosed in 2011, but I suspect that it went back further than that because as a teenager I really battled with my menstrual cycle, so it was probably on the go from then.
So my symptoms, give or take a few, are usually severe pelvic pain. It usually feels like somebody's stabbing me in the pelvis. Heavy painful periods, bloating, urinary problems, and TMI, but it's really painful for me to go poo.
So obviously the heavy periods, but when I actually started to notice there was a problem was when I came off of my depot injection, which I'd actually gone on to quite young in life for obviously contraceptive purposes. When I came off of that for my break, because you're supposed to break every 8 years for your strength of your bones, I noticed that I was very pain, I was very tender, and I started getting sharp pains when I sat down, not necessarily linked to my abdomen, but to my bowel. And the suspicion is that all the signs seemed to point to endometriosis, and they thought it was perhaps attached to my bowel.
So my experience has always been usually painful periods, heavy periods, sometimes some bloating, but never really too bad until recently. And then I started having all the above symptoms, and it has been a balls ache to try and get diagnosed, but I am on the combined pill right now to try and help ease the symptoms, so I don't actually have that many periods a year. I actually only have one. Some people might think I'm very lucky with that, but...
So obviously I have endometriosis. I was diagnosed, like I said, when I came off the depot when you were about 8 or 9 years old. Obviously my sister has endometriosis, so I'm well acquainted with it, and that's partially why we were able to diagnose it so quickly.
How long did it take me to get diagnosed? Technically 5 years from my start of my symptoms, but about 10 months since I severely had endometriosis.
It was pretty quick. So what happened is I noticed these strange things happening, and I spoke to my sister about it, and she said, "You've got endo." And I was like, really? But it doesn't sound like that's something you get with endo. And she was like, "Oh, no, it depends where it's growing on. I'm betting my bottom dollar you've got it." So I basically just went to the doctor and said, "These are my symptoms. My sister says it's endometriosis." And the doctor basically said, "Yes, it sounds like endometriosis." So she said, "We'll put you on the depot," which is the most common treatment for endometriosis, or mild endometriosis. And she said if it doesn't make things better, then we can rule out endometriosis and we can look at other things. But the minute I went on, well, maybe not the minute, things were definitely better.
So how I got diagnosed with endometriosis was actually by an MRI scan, but not by the MRI itself. Gynae assessment team took a look at it and kind of decided that it was endometriosis.
But yeah, I didn't have any fancy laparoscopies or things like that. We didn't need to get to that stage. I was a bit blessed, I guess, to have a doctor that agreed with me and was able to quickly, I mean like within a week, book me for my depot injection and start getting things under control.
So what helped me with my endometriosis? Mefenamic acid, my saviour, morphine and amitriptyline were my real saviours in all of it. I'd say mefenamic acid straight away.
I guess contraception from a young age, and I'd advise it, obviously even if you aren't sexually active. If you suspect you have endometriosis, you know, I'm an advocate of progesterone. So the depot worked for me, and I think it does work because it actually stops your periods completely. So it stops your body from producing that lining, and it's the lining obviously that's the pain in the butt, excuse the pun.
What I've tried to help my endometriosis, I've tried many things. I've tried the combined pill, I've tried tramadol, naproxen, ibuprofen, pop pill. I've tried a lot of things. So that's kind of a really long question to say.
I've tried very little. Like I said, I was quite lucky to get something that worked from the get-go. And to be honest, I'm nervous about coming off the depot from my 8-year break because I know what's going to happen. I know the endo is going to come back. I know I'm going to be in a lot of pain. It just feels like a bit of a nightmare. And then when I go back on it, is it going to help as much as it did? Yeah, so we'll see if I have to maybe use other methods in the future.
My endometriosis got worse. I have considered it, and if it was needed and there were no other options, then yeah, I would do it.
Yes, obviously in my case I would try laparoscopies first, but if I did follow down the route like Rachel did, I would very likely contemplate it. I'm heading towards my 40s. I'm not planning on having any other children. So yeah, I think there's good hormones and stuff nowadays that people can go on to help them through that transition.
What can NHS do? Big word. Listen. That's what they can do. They don't listen. They seem to just act like you're some like crazy person who's like lying about their pain, and I'm not.
Oh, refer you to the right specialist. So you know, and you've probably told your viewers, what a nightmare of waiting months and months and months to see one gynae and then another 3 months to see another gynae, only to be told that they actually aren't laparoscopy specialists and you need to be referred elsewhere. If I'd known better from the beginning, I would say, I would want the GP to say, right, if we suspect endometriosis, let's skip the gynecologist, or just get the gynecologist to refer you. You don't have to go and see them. I'll write your gynecologist will get them to refer you to an endometriosis clinic, because that's where all the sympathy is at. That's where all the empathy and it's where people are that know what you're going through. Yeah, general gynaes, not so much.
No, I actually haven't had a laparoscopy, but I'm planning on having one very soon.
0. But I would in a heartbeat if my endometriosis wasn't getting contained with the contraception.
Yeah, it does stop me doing my daily activities. I'm pretty much bed bound and have been for about 10 months now, so I'm getting quite bored in my bed.
No, not at the moment, although I will note that I do still have the odd pain, and I go, oh, I think I actually say to you, oh, I've got a bit of period pain today. Of course I don't get periods, but you can relate to that kind of pain. Yeah.
Of course I'm worried about passing it on to my children, of course. But I think the number one thing I'd recommend is birth control.
Have boys. No, obviously I have passed it on to my child. And what I would maybe recommend is from an early age, or from the minute you think that they're going to suffer with endometriosis, to get them on the right contraception. I'm not sure whether there's hurdles to overcome with pre-18s when it comes to contraception, but yeah, get them onto something to help them, and if it's not helping them, get them to the right people.
I think the best way to help other people with endometriosis is to talk about it more. Not enough people talk about it, so you kind of feel isolated.
I think by being open and sharing and talking about it, I think there's a lot of stigma around women's issues, and gynecological issues aren't spoken about, and not even amongst females. So yeah, I think if we could just be more open, hopefully from this video you're doing, people will be like, oh yeah, that sounds like something I've had. I thought I just had like heavy periods, or more painful period pains than other people. But yeah, I think endometriosis, the key is to catch it early. So guys, if any of this sounds familiar, get to your doctor.
So what advice would I give to people with suspected or diagnosed endometriosis? Don't be afraid to reach out for help. I know it can seem like you're so isolated and that nobody understands what you're going through, but believe me, there are so many people who understand it. And I'll put links down below to support groups and stuff like that. There's a really good site, there's great books out there. You know, there's so many things, so don't be afraid to reach out for help.
Again, try and catch it early, so don't put it off, don't wait for the symptoms to get worse, don't wait for it to be bad enough to warrant attention. I know a lot of us put off going to the doctor. If you suspect it right at the beginning, take it to the doctor. Doctors are humans as well, they don't know everything. Say to them, I think it might be endometriosis.
Hi, thank you for letting me join your YouTube channel. You've sent me some questions about endometriosis. I think it's a very important topic to be talking about. I know a lot of people can feel alone and lost, either when they're just experiencing the symptoms or when they've just received a diagnosis. So hopefully our talking today can help people not feel so alone, and also show that it can be manageable and that the endometriosis doesn't have to define them. You asked me how long ago I was diagnosed with endometriosis. I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was 18, so over 20 years ago. You also asked what my initial symptoms were, and these were the usual endometriosis symptoms, as a heavy and painful menstrual cycle. I experienced PMS outside of my cycle time. I had mood swings, weight gain, and exhaustion. I know that endometriosis symptoms can often lead to feelings of depression, and I certainly experienced those later on during the period of my diagnosis. My diagnosis took over a year originally, mainly because doctors weren't educated in what endometriosis was and what the symptoms was. I ended up seeing a doctor who actually thought that the endometriosis was in my head and tried to treat me for psychological reasons, but thankfully later on I saw a gynecologist who specialized in endometriosis, and he was able to diagnose me via laparoscopy. After this, I was treated for severe endometriosis, with most of the regular treatments in hormones and pills and injections and all of the things that they usually use not working for me. My endometriosis finally went into remission, and I got married and had children. And then when my youngest turned 5, I started experiencing some symptoms again, and so I went back to the GP and ended up back at the doctor's. The difference between my diagnosis when I was 18 and my treatment of endometriosis now is I have a lot more research behind me, and I'm able to manage my pain in a much more efficient way. The treatments that I have tried and have been quite successful is changing my diet, exercising when I can and as much as I can. That also helps battle the weight gain that can often come with endometriosis. Another thing is I have a specific medicine that the doctor has prescribed for me, which I take over my cycle, which helps lessen the symptoms. You asked me what I tried. As I've said, I tried just about anything I could get my hands on. I feel much more confident now that I can manage, and hopefully I can put my endometriosis into remission. I believe that I can be healed of this. If you asked if my endometriosis got worse, if I would consider a hysterectomy, my GP and my gynecologist have discussed this with me, and after doing extensive research, I personally feel, although I would have to make the decision if it came to that point, but I personally feel that I wouldn't go down this route because I haven't seen significant evidence of endometriosis being improved greatly by the hysterectomy. So for me personally, I wouldn't choose to do a hysterectomy. You also asked what the NHS could do to make diagnosis easier. I think that educating both the doctors and schools and nurses on recognizing symptoms of endometriosis and letting young women know that a extremely painful and heavy cycle is actually not normal. If that is the first thing, then we'll get diagnosis a lot earlier, and it won't get to the late stages where the pain can be so severe and life changing. You asked also if I'd had a laparoscopy. I had 9 laparoscopies in 8 years. The laparoscopies weren't very successful in my case because the endometriosis quickly came back. You also asked if my pain stops me from having daily activities, from doing my daily activities. And the thing is that when I was first diagnosed, it definitely did. But because there was such a long period in between my first remission and my reappearance of my endometriosis, I feel I have a good grasp on the tools that I can use to maintain and keep going. So I do have some pain that interrupts my day, but not greatly. You also asked if I was worried about passing on to my children. I know that endometriosis is considered to potentially be hereditary, but I know there are cases where the children haven't actually developed endometriosis, even though the mother and the grandmother have endometriosis. I am hoping and praying that my children will be spared this, and I'm setting them up for success by teaching them to have a good diet, to exercise, and definitely to drink enough water, because I think these are key factors in helping to keep our bodies in a position that they won't then develop this condition. I also would like to try and recommend that they stay off oral contraception as much as possible, because for me this was a trigger point and it aggravated my endometriosis, even though I know that's a common treatment for it. For me personally, what the gynecologist discovered is that oral contraceptives of any kind actually cause my endometriosis to flare and grow faster. So that is one thing that I will be talking to my children about and working with them over the years to come. You asked what I thought we could do to help others. I know there are a lot of help groups out there, but I think that staying and talking about our experiences and sharing the things that have helped us and just being a support to one another is vital. We need to band together as sisters and just help everybody know that they're not alone. This affects a lot of people, so it's not just a few women here and there. So hopefully some of what I've shared with you today, I'd just like to end on a note to say that your endometriosis does not define you. It is not who you are. You can manage this, and you have a lot of support out there. Reach out.
Thank you so much, ladies, for sharing your experiences with endometriosis. I really hope the information we put forward in this video will help somebody else, because I'm sure all of us would agree that sometimes with endometriosis you can feel so alone and like you're the only one going through this, but believe me, you're not. That goes into saying this is one of my favourite books at the minute for endometriosis. It is by Dr. Andrew S. Cook and Danielle Cook. One's a doctor. And it's recipes and tells you stuff about endometriosis and stuff that helps. And also, I'm going to be trying a whole bunch of vitamins and stuff like that. So I'm going to be trying milk thistle, magnesium, vitamin C, turmeric, and valerian. That's what I'm going to be trying. So with that being said, thanks for watching, guys. Bye.